All right, welcome to another language conventions video. So the previous video was about transitional phrases, and what we did was just introduce examples of transitional phrases. Now, this second lesson is actually focused on making sure that we know some of the basic functions of transitional phrases and that we use them effectively in our writing. So with that said, I'm going to refer to this chart right here. But these are the most common functions that I would really like for you to master in this middle school language arts class. Obviously, there's a lot more transitional phrases than this, but we are going to focus on these throughout the course of our entire school year. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first function, which is to add details and context to a particular sentence. We used this one yesterday in our example where we're like, during class, Mr. Bailey did such and such a thing. But basically, these transitional phrases are ones that you would use to just add details to any situation that you were trying to discuss. Now, one of the ones that we've been using as we have been analyzing literary and nonfiction text are ones that are known as illustration. So thus, for example, for instance, namely, to illustrate. In other words, in particular and specifically, we've been using these to lead into examples from the text or examples from the nonfiction sources and the like. This list of transitional phrases is one that I really need you to know off the top of your head and to be able to use, especially when you start responding to works of literature and nonfiction. Similarly, we have additional ones. So we have addition, furthermore, moreover, besides, also, likewise, similarly. These are all transitional phrases that show an addition from one sentence to the next sentence. The next class of transitional phrases that I want you to be familiar with then are the contrasting ones. Contrasting means that you're going to say one thing, but you're going to say something that's kind of the opposite or difficult or goes contrary to what you said in the previous sentence. So like, however, nevertheless, and despite this, and contrast, and on the other hand, and the like. So then there's one other class that we've been using pretty much in our English class, and that is cause and effect / logical transitional phrases. Particularly, we've used thus and hence. I want you to become familiar with using consequently and accordingly. We used therefore a couple times. And then last but not least, we want to be able to use those that have to do with time, namely first, secondly, third, next, finally, and conclusion, because you're going to have to describe the sequence of events sometimes when you are analyzing or describing something for this class. So this chart right here kind of is really important, and I need everybody to be familiar with it. I'm actually going to erase some of my markings so that it is a lot cleaner for the purpose of this video. But these are the classes and examples of transitional phrases that we need to actually master in this class. That said, I'm going to go down to some of the examples that we've been working on. In particular, we have example 1. The theme of The Brave Little Toaster is that smart technologies can be vulnerable to failures and hacking. Now we have to choose a transitional phrase here. All the appliances that were connected to the internet malfunctioned because of Looney Gooney. So what we have to do is come up with, well, what was the relationship between this sentence and that sentence? So I'm going to pause, I think, for a second so that the students in the class can actually do this one. All right, now I'm going to move down to example 2. All right, so my next example, one of the greatest guitar players is Jimi Hendrix. What's going to be our transitional phrase? Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page are also considered great guitar players. All right, example 3. Mr. Bailey has a tendency to think that his jokes are funny. Transitional phrase. Most of his students find his jokes humorless and a waste of existence, and they wish they had those minutes and seconds back that were wasted by the dumb jokes. Okay, example 4. This actually refers to the previous sentence, so we're actually doing the relationship between this one and this one. So we'll go with that. So next transitional phrase, you got to figure it out. Most of his students find his jokes humorless and a waste of existence, and they wish that they had those minutes back that they were wasted by the dumb jokes. Then, what's the next one? Mr. Bailey should probably reevaluate his material. And then that brings us to example number 5. With less than a minute left in the game, the football team scored a touchdown. Transitional phrase, they went for the 2-point conversion and won the game. So these are all examples that we can do. So at this point, I'm actually going to go through the answers. I'm going to have to move my font size down a little bit to there, but here we go. All right, so the theme of the Brave Little Toaster is that smart technologies can be vulnerable to failures and hacking. So what we can do then is, for example, and so this is an example of the illustration relationship between those two sentences. All right, second example. One of the greatest guitar players of all time is Jimi Hendrix. The relationship for this one is addition. So we're going to do similarly. Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page are also considered great guitar players. So addition, so you see that similarly is one of the options on the list. Mr. Bailey has a tendency to think that his jokes are funny. Most of his students find his jokes humorless and a waste of existence and wish they had those time back. This is contrast relationship. So we're going to use on the other hand to show that this is contrasting with the previous one. So we're going to fill in this one is on the other hand as well. And that they wish they had those minutes and seconds back that were wasted by his dumb jokes. Now, the next one should be hence, because the next relationship this is the consequence of the previous one. So that's going to fall under this cause-effect logical. So we're going to use hence for example 4. Which brings us to the last example. With less than a minute in the game, the football team scored a touchdown. This is time sequence, so we're just going to use the word next to show the relationship between those things. So this is an example of using transitional phrases in order to show the relationship from one sentence to the next. Thank you.